Now we're
Good,
live.
good. What's that?
Now we're live, it says.
Now we're live. Woohoo! Yay for this new feature on Substack and
Yes.
for our initial trial here.
Right.
Awesome. Today we're covering a topic, Adam, that you and I have been discussing a lot. I'm going to reference a couple of our podcasts and
Hmm.
just discussions we have, not for recording purposes, about the pressures that farmers are facing. You write about this a lot on your Substack,
Hmm.
Farming Full Time. And I write about it quite a bit on Raw Milk Mama. And we're just going to have a discussion about it today. And people can chime in with questions and get a feel for things. But hey, I'm so glad we're doing this, Adam. And it's so good to see you upright and smiling and all the things.
Yeah. Made it through the bleak midwinter, I guess you could say.
Yes. But
Yeah.
hopefully we're on the tail end of winter now for
I
both.
hope so. They're talking snow again this weekend, but we need moisture, so I won't complain too much.
Yeah.
We're
And
pretty dry.
you're up in Minnesota, right?
Correct. Well, I'm in North Dakota right now, but we farm in Minnesota, just across the river.
Okay. So the snow is in Minnesota, probably North Dakota also.
It's here too. Yeah, we had 6 inches over the weekend, and it's just about melted, but just in time for some more. But we haven't had any all winter. It's black dirt blowing in the ditches and kind of makes the guy sick to drive around and see all that.
Well, and that is a fine segue into our topic, which is all about the pressures that farmers are facing, especially right now. And it's everything, Adam, from land use to the funding freezes that we're seeing, and something you talk about quite a bit, which is the mental health challenges that so many farmers are facing right now.
Yeah,
So,
probably everyone.
yeah, a lot of people, right? It's not limited to farmers, but they
Yeah,
have a slightly larger impact on our food security.
of
So
course.
it affects, when farmers are going through this kind of thing, it affects so many people, I think.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not to minimize anyone's. It's just, I think also farmers, we don't talk about it enough with farmers, right? And you can speak to that a little bit.
yeah. We don't talk about it at all. If you talk about mental health or if you're struggling or anything, you're weak. It's easier just to bury it and suck it up and keep going. That's what we were all taught. I, our grandpas and their grandpas, they lived through harder times and they sucked it up and they kept going. But nobody ever talked about the stuff they were going through, the struggles of, I don't know, just living in constant debt. You always have an operating note over your head, and then all these things you can't control. It's like the ultimate stoic occupation, really. Um, and it wears on a guy. And if you don't talk about it, bad things happen, blow ups happen, farms break up. Family farms that used to be two, three brothers farming together, you hardly see that anymore. They all eventually separate. And I think it's because nobody talks about their issues. Nobody gets their needs met because nobody wants to talk about this stuff. Why? Because it's uncomfortable. It's hard to do.
Yes.
I struggle with it, but I try to do it anyway because it's helped me personally. So I keep talking about it. I guess even if it's too much for people, if it makes them uncomfortable, I try to push through that. I guess so. Hopefully, it helps some people.
I really think it does, Adam. And I think it helps to change or shift the cultural thinking around farmers talking about these things openly.
Right.
And I think it's also, I mean, you wanted to mention the personal impact. I mean, we can all see the headlines, right?
Hmm.
And I'm not a full-time farmer. I am a part-time grower, but I work full-time with farmers. And it's devastating what's happening right now. Absolutely devastating. And so I think it's really important what you do, because the headlines say things like funding freezes are affecting the farmers, or a couple years ago, it was the absolute demolition of the dairies and the
Right.
dairy industry with rock bottom prices. They were selling out like crazy. Today, it's the culling of entire flocks for bird flu. And
Right.
that, it's one thing to see the headlines, but it's a totally different thing to really internalize and understand the impact that these types of things have on our farmers. And I think you do such a great job really speaking to that.
Thank you.
So what do you want to say about that? I mean, how can we, seeing these headlines, how can we zoom in and make it personal?
Um, well, number one, again, it's talking about it. It's bringing it to people's attention, and that's kind of why I started writing farming full time, was the mental health side of it, because I that's kind of what I was writing about before I started writing about farming, and then I've been talking about this for a long time, 20 years, man. Like, because I've had my own mental health struggles, just trying to get through my own stuff, and the biggest thing I think that's helped has been talking about it again. And I see so much of it, especially dying rural towns. It's just we don't have a lot of people to talk to. We don't have community anymore, and that's not anything we did. There's just not a lot of people up here. People have left. There's hardly any businesses open. There's no community gathering. There's no gas station coffee in the morning. I mean, those things are a relic of the past. I don't know. We tend to isolate ourselves up here. And then I was talking to a farmer yesterday, and you mentioned the dairy industry falling apart. That's where commercial ag is right now, or crop production. Like, I
Right.
talked to a guy yesterday. He told me a stat from his banker. His banker has 35 operating notes that he writes in a year. So 35 farms that he works with. 33 of those 35 last year were in the red, lost money. The only two that actually made money are guys that are older, established, own all their stuff. They don't rent a lot of land, they own it, they own their machinery, not a lot of payments. And it's looking like it's not just one off, not just a one tough year. This is, I don't know, it feels like something that could last. Like, we've got Brazil, South America, we can't compete with them on a crop production scale. They've got cheaper land, they've got cheaper equipment, cheaper labor. They're going to eat our lunch. And I don't see that ending anytime soon. So we have to figure out a way. I think we're going through a shift where it's going to go from quantity, produce as many bushels as you can, to maybe a more quality focused approach. Maybe big food processors want wheat with a lot of, I don't know, so certain nutrient, protein,
Yeah.
riboflavin, whatever it is. I see a lot more of that, like more targeted contracts to produce quality, instead of just how many bushels can we produce? Because the whole feed the world thing it was
Yes.
bullshit, to be honest. It is. I mean, the population is declining in major countries. Japan's declining. Nobody's having babies in America anymore. It's So the whole feed the world thing, and the whole we're going to be at 10 billion people tomorrow. It's a joke, and I think we're about to go through a shift, and I don't think anybody knows what it looks like, including myself. I have no idea, but
Well, Adam, you're touching on a lot of
I
big,
know.
woo, big complex
Yeah.
stuff. And I want to pull out some of those threads, because one of the things that's important here is farmers are selling because they literally have no other option.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they're selling out, like you were saying, of the 35 farmers that you used in that illustration, 33 of them are in the red.
From last year. Yeah. No, on a 1 year.
Right, but
Because
it's kind of bleak. It doesn't look like that's going to just magically change
right.
anytime soon,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So that's a bleak future to look into, and so it makes sense that they would sell. But then we have this large that opens up the larger conversation of land use. How are people using land? How are we as a country? How are we as individual states or communities? What are our agreements on land use right now? And it feels to me like that's completely out the window. I mean, here in Maryland, we're getting like the threat of eminent domain on
Really.
really old established farmland to build logistics for energy transfer, because we're in such a populated area that Adam, it doesn't make any sense to me at all. Like the logistics of transporting energy from Pennsylvania or northern Maryland all the way down to Virginia for all the data centers that they need. What
Right.
that's doing is it's destroying farms in Maryland.
Yeah. I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
I mean, it's kind of all of these small hidden things that don't seem like they're connected, but they're interconnected. They're all interdependent, right? So the how we use energy and how we are as a culture shifting towards new energy sources. I mean, one could argue solar energy is actually the only energy and the oldest. but it's how we're using it, how we're employing it, that becomes a threat to our farms as well.
Right.
And can we learn a way that's guided by wisdom on
I
some of these
hope,
things?
I
Because
hope so.
right,
Yeah.
right. And to your point, I mean, it's either debt, farmers are getting squeezed out through debt
Hmm.
or lack of profit, through land use, or in some cases, like you're talking about in your community, the land gets completely devalued. Nobody wants to go there anymore. And
Right.
then you don't have people, you don't have a community, and it's harder to build resilience and to build networks.
Yeah. Well, and the barriers to entry are so high. It takes so much money just to plant an acre of wheat costs almost $500, and then you're probably not going to get that back this year when wheat is $5.50. But and you mentioned farmers selling out. The thing is, we're not seeing a lot of that. The old guard is hanging on as long as they can, and I'm not exactly sure why that is. If it's maybe they're maybe there's nothing better to do. Maybe they don't know who to sell to. I talked to one guy who said he said farming isn't as fun as it used to be even 10, 15 years ago. He said it feels like it's nothing but vultures circling, waiting for him to die so they can get his land. Just people just kissing his ass so they can get his stuff when he dies. And it's, I don't know, that's a pretty depressing thing to hear, to be honest.
It is,
Yeah.
yes.
But yeah, the cost to entry is high. Leverage is the default setting. You have basically, if you're going to farm, you better be ready to go into debt. That's how it works. And the other thing is, for the past 20 years, we had low interest rates. The cost of capital was basically free. So you had all this investor money seeking a return on their investment. Well, a savings account was less than 1%. That's junk. Bonds were junk. Everything was junk. So people are buying farmland because it's a stable return. It's 5%. It looked great at the time. But now we have interest rates again. Monetary policy is back to, I call it normal, whatever it has always been. And people that have capital, they're not going to come and farm. They don't even want farmland anymore. So I see that starting to reverse too. I mean, it hasn't really happened yet, but I kind of see that heading that direction if interest rates stay where they are, because cost of capital drives a lot of things in this world, and especially in ag, farmland.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it does. Absolutely. And I think, do you think it would be fair to say that some of the people snatching up land are not wanting to or actively farming it? Like I'm seeing this huge influx of people who they want that sort of rural lifestyle, but they don't actually want it. They
No,
complain at the
it's
farming activities that are happening around them. And so that's like another pressure. And that's something that my friend and colleague Dana DePrima at the Four Farmers Movement, that's something she writes about quite a bit. She talks about how people have this idealistic view of what a farming community looks like, or what that lifestyle is, and so they move rural, and then immediately they just start complaining about what the farmers are actually doing.
yeah.
And she's got so many wonderful points in that, because I see that everywhere I look. And I'm in a lot more populated area than you.
Hmm.
So there is bound to be some of that. People literally go get a farm or go buy land a little bit out of the city so that they have this oasis, shall we say. And
Hmm.
then they start complaining about what their farming neighbors are doing.
Right, right.
And
If
it's
they even
ridiculous.
if they even move there at all, for a lot of people, it's just another asset for their portfolio. Just buy this quarter of land in North Dakota and get my rent check every year, and it's just another way to make a couple of bucks. But yeah, there's a lot of that too. People want to get out to the rural areas, and then they see what it's really like. It's probably too much for them. I don't know.
Yeah, and Adam, I want to touch on a couple things, because this really, like, I'm having so many thoughts that are jumbling together right now. I'm having trouble getting them out, but this really goes back to a much larger cultural conversation about our use of land.
Hmm. It does. Yeah.
So I want to place a bookmark there, and uh, oh, the other thought's gone; it flew away. But hey, I want to
It
say, look,
happens.
whoever's listening, if you all have questions for Adam or me that we can even touch on, please just put them in the chat, and we will do our best to answer them however we can. This is a big topic we're talking about, farmers under pressure. Adam writes about this pretty extensively on his Substack, Farming Full Time. I talk about food security and how we can all be a little closer to nature on my Substack, Raw Milk Mama. And thanks to all of you who have joined. This is our first Substack Live. And yeah, we're having a conversation about this because it's affecting all of us, believe it or not. And I know what it was I was going to bring up, Adam, which is uh, in America, 1%, 1% of our population, give or take a few thousand people, are in the farming and ag sector.
Yeah, 1%.
And when you actually stop to think about that, it's mind boggling.
It is, and it's easy to understand how we're misunderstood, stereotyped, all those things, because there's just so few of us, and we're packed into these remote areas where nobody is. So there's no visibility, so people don't know what it's like. So again, that's the whole reason for this. That's why I write about it, to try to just shed some light on it, show people what it's actually like out here. Because you hear,
Yeah.
we're demonized a lot for the things we do. You hear it on, well, even Joe Rogan, biggest podcast in the world. All you hear about is how it's monoculture. We're blowing fertilizer out all over the place, when that's not true at all. I mean, we don't waste. We do our best not to waste fertilizer. It costs money, like,
Yeah.
and but all, that's what's so hard about this. Like you said, you got all these thoughts going in your head. It's
Yeah.
such a complex topic, and it's connected in so many ways. It's hard to even. That's why I write, because I can figure this out. I'm a slow thinker, I guess. Not a slow thinker. That sounds terrible, but you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. I mean, you really
Yeah.
have to make sense of it all.
Yeah, yeah, and it's
And I
really hard to
think
do.
to your point, Adam, so you are so great at telling these firsthand stories of what it's like to be that farmer who's getting maligned and getting hated, and yet you're still out there producing. And I write a lot about that consumer perspective and what can we do to support the farmers? What can we do to make sure that they're not dying in the fields, both figuratively and literally,
Right.
unfortunately. And there is so much we can do, but one of those things is a shift in mindset, and this I think touches like it's just this tiny little touch on that bigger topic of how we agree as a country to use our land, and then like I want to say that, but then I also want to say absolutely boil it down to states, boil it down to counties, communities, households. We have to have these conversations,
Yeah.
and we're having a big, messy cultural conversation right now about our use of fertilizer, glyphosate.
Right.
Glyphosate, for those unaware, glyphosate is one of the most prominent herbicides that farmers use, and it was manufactured by Monsanto, which is now bought by Bayer. So it's very messy, it's complex. It is that these chemicals are causing some kinds of substantial damage both to our soils and to our people. And we have to have that cultural conversation. But I always wonder, can we do it in a way that does not vilify the farmers?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
And
Um, oh, sorry, go ahead.
well, no, I mean, I think that's part of this messiness is that there's so much ignorance about what it takes for somebody like you to get a crop out of the ground. There's so much ignorance. And then there's this apathy. Like people don't want to learn what it takes. They just want to be stuck in their dogmatic approach to it.
Right, right. But
And
I will say this, there's an appetite for change out there. And I hear it everywhere I go. Sherry and I were at her friend's place about 2 weeks ago for a dinner, and a girl and a guy in their 40s, my age, heavily Republican, which the only reason I bring that up is because Republicans don't typically talk about healthy food, but they're all make America healthy again, and they're talking about how they want to eat healthy, and And the one guy builds apartments for a living, and he's talking to me about soil health. And he's like, "Yeah, I got some Gabe Brown books on no-till and cover crop." And I'm like, "Who is this guy?" But I hear it everywhere. People are interested in healthy food, nutrient dense food. There's an appetite for change, and then we're at this point in ag where it just feels like we're about to go through this massive shift, and nobody knows what's happening. I was at Commodity Classic, a big egg conference in Denver 3 weeks ago, and the place is packed, and people are actually interested in this about nutrient dense foods, and then we've got all these GLP-1 drugs that people are taking, and that makes your body crave nutrient dense foods. So part of the shift is coming from that, and that's not even a thought. It's the body demanding nutrient dense foods. So the market, people's attitudes, it's all pushing us towards this new direction where none of us know where it's going. It's I don't know, everybody's looking for answers, including myself. I don't know, it's a really interesting time to be here, and I have no idea where it's going. No idea at all, but that's what we're here for, I guess. Try to figure it out, right?
Well, Adam, one of the things that I love and admire and respect about you is your curious approach to all of these really complex topics and issues. And I love to hear you talking about that side of it too, because, we could stay in that, I don't know what's going to happen. The uncertainty is killing me. The debt is overwhelming. The pressures are awful. But instead, and I'd like to think I do it too, we're asking the questions: why is this happening? What is it telling us? Where can this lead us?
Right. Well, the alternative is it's all screwed and you just bury yourself in a hole, which I've kind of done through the winter. You go through these periods where it's just a hopeless feeling. Like, what are you gonna do? And but you can't do that. That's giving up. You got to keep going. I don't know. I feel like as a farmer, it's my job to figure these things out, and because I want to be ahead of the game and I want to be able to keep doing this and be around for a long time, but also I want to help shape that, because we're not doing everything perfect. We could improve a lot of things just in how we farm. We could do a better job. We could be more responsible with our fertilizers, with our pesticides, with our herbicides, all those things. So,
Two
um,
things I want to touch on.
sure.
How does that chase of perfection actually add to the pressure? And I also want to talk about, um, after that, I want you to answer that because that's something that keeps coming up for me, is like this chase for perfection, that farming has to be some ideal perfect, or that we do, right? Which is impossible. And so where does that leave us? And then I want to ask you another question about like prominent farms. So we'll get to that, but go with the chase for perfection.
I don't know if it's a chase for perfection because we'll never get there. That's all farming is trial and error. Every year you get one trial and error, and that's what it's always going to be. There's never going to be perfection, but I mean, yeah, you strive to get as close to it as possible, because you're graded on that. That's how your bank account either grows or shrinks, basically. You always ask me such difficult questions. These are all
Wait,
difficult questions.
you're the one who used the word perfect. So I was
I
pulling
did.
that. Yes.
Yep. Call me out.
But
um,
again, I mean, you're approaching this with curiosity and
yeah.
introspection, and that's something I really admire.
Thank you. Yeah. I lost my train of thought.
Well, I think Thomas Jefferson might actually have the answer, because he called it pursuit of happiness. It's
Right.
like, you know what? Maybe we're not all going to be happy. There's no like landing pad for happy, right? And so maybe just in farming, there's no landing pad for perfect. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story. A couple of years ago, I wanted so badly to get my garlic planted on time, which is October here.
Yeah.
And so I just had all of these guilt feelings and like shame feelings, and like, Liz, why didn't you get your garlic planted on time? And then it was a friend of mine who teaches she teaches permaculture. Nikki Schauder at permaculturegardens.org. She's an incredible resource. She had sent out an email, to her people, and it was like, well, um, it was something like, I think it was the Ruth Stout quote that if your garden is messy this time of year, that's exactly how it should be. And I was like, oh, phew, thank goodness, because my garden is a disaster. And then it was something else about planting garlic. It's not too late. And I was like, huh. And now, mind you, it was mid-December.
Mm-hmm.
And I just decided I'm just going to do it and see what happens. And that's to your point. Like, that's the kind of gardener I am. Do it and see what happens. Now, that's not to say that I don't read the books and I don't take the courses. I do all of that learning, but sometimes life gets ahead of me and I don't execute when I want. And so, you know what, Adam? I went out there and I dug up the little spots for the garlic and I planted my garlic. And what do you know? I had garlic in the spring
Yeah.
and I planted it in December. So that I think you're so right. I mean, yes, we always strive for that more, how to say it, more natural, closer to nature
Mm-hmm.
form of gardening. And we strive for that community and connection. And then at the end of the day, put the seeds in the ground and see what happens.
See what
Plant the
happens.
tree
Yeah.
and see if it grows.
Yeah.
Because that's that's all we've got. And nature has her own way of doing things.
Mm-hmm. That's all this is trial and error. It's gotten to where we've all gotten so used, from a big farm standpoint or a commercial farm standpoint, we've all gotten so used to doing the exact same thing every year. Like, we think we found what's worked. We think we found perfect, but we haven't. So when you're guys like us who are willing to try new things and see what happens, you're kind of the outcast. You're the weird guy. Like, what the hell are those guys up to now? And then small towns, you know how they are. Everybody talks about everybody. Everybody knows about everybody. And it's like, so to do that, to see what happens, it's a risk for people. It's a social risk. It's scary to do it. So that's why it feels like we've been stuck for so long, and now we're all standing on the edge of the cliff, and all we're doing is arguing about the view. Like, when what we really need to do is just move forward and try some stuff and see what happens, right?
Like move forward, jump off that cliff.
Yeah, probably not the best analogy there.
I'm like a 10 feet away from the edge
Yeah.
kind of person.
Well, maybe, yeah, but it is. It's taking a leap of faith. You try stuff. That's what farming has always been. Trying to figure it out. I went to a thing last week, a Sugar Beet Institute meeting, and there was a panel of four guys, and they had a combined age of about 260. They were all in their late 80s. But man, it was
Wow.
so interesting to listen to those guys talk. Two of them have been farming sugar beets for 100 years. Their families have. And just to see or to hear about the change that those guys have witnessed. I mean, most sugar beet farmers today, the young ones probably don't even know what a monogerm sugar beet is. They used to plant them by weight. They would plant 7 pounds per acre, and one seed of sugar beets would grow seven different sugar beets. So you had to go out there on your hands and knees and thin out those extra 6 or 7 beets or whatever. You pick the best one and leave that. I mean, it used to be so much more labor intensive, so much more challenging. And then just the change that these guys have seen over the years, it it just boggles my mind. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
I think the
but yeah,
same way that we've seen tech just exponentially go
yeah,
off the charts, so has ag. And
yeah,
and that
yeah,
is also because of the combination of ag and tech, right? Like
right,
talking
yeah,
about sugar beets, those are now predominantly genetically modified.
yeah,
And Adam, I also want to make sure that like we properly uh introduce our how to put it, our differences. Is that a good way of putting it?
sure, sure, yeah,
So, anybody who follows my work knows that I am a huge proponent of direct farmer to consumer marketing and consumer supporting local farms and uh, what can we do to increase and improve that, grow those relationships, build local community around food. And I also recognize that commodity farmers are currently who are feeding people for the
Hmm.
most part.
Yeah.
And you are a commodity farmer. And we've formed this incredible relationship talking about these issues and talking about the nuances in them. And I think both of us have gained an understanding and a depth from each other that like I
Oh, big
really
time.
admire and respect.
Yeah.
And it really helps, and you've helped me be able to articulate more clearly, more nuanced some of those challenges that the commodity farmers are facing. That the commodity farmers have almost become like the social scapegoat,
Yeah.
right? Let's blame everything on them. And we see that so much on the East Coast here, where the chicken farmers of the Delmarva Peninsula blame them for all of the bay
Sure.
contamination, all of
Hmm.
it. So in some ways, and then you're over there saying, but yes, we do need to look at other ways of producing food. We do need to look at ways to improve and not use as many chemicals. So anyway, that's a brief explanation of where we're the same and where we've come at this conversation from different angles. I don't even want to say differences because I think underlying philosophies, we have so much in common, and underlying compassion and humanity, we're on the same page. It's just that we've
Yeah.
approached the agriculture conversation from different angles. And now we're looking at those nuances and the different facets and how that how those different angles contribute to each other.
Right. And you're right. We're a lot more alike, not just me and you, but you know, we're all a lot more alike than we think we are. But we all need somebody to, I don't want to say somebody to blame, but we all need a cause. We need to attribute a cause to something. So why not pick a farmer? I don't know why this is maybe a bit off topic, but I just was thinking about how soil health is connected to quality food. There's a guy I follow named Kelly Garrett out of Iowa. He's a cattle farmer, big corn farmer, and he direct to consumer. He sells beef online, glcbeef.com, some of the best stuff you'll ever have. And he noticed once he started changing his farming practices, he started using less nitrogen, less
Mm.
phosphorus, and his soil, he monitors his soil health. There's different tests you can do to monitor that. And when his soil health improved, he said the beef got tremendously better. And I can vouch for that. I got a care package from my buddy at Sound Agriculture. He sent me a couple of Denver fillets and amazing beef, like amazing. So soil health is tied to it, and I do think we have been harming the soil for a long time. But there are ways. There are ways to do it better. I mean, he grows 6,000 acres. He's a huge operator, but he's found a way to do it better, and it shows. He feeds, his corn goes to ethanol, and then he takes back the byproducts of it and feeds it to his cattle to finish them. And just in 2 years of better soil, his beef got that much better. So there's a huge link there that many of us are missing. And there's ways to do it better without losing yield, without
Yeah.
harming your checkbook. There are ways. It's just it's hard for guys to take that leap and do something different again for all the reasons I mentioned earlier. It's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I would say to that a couple of things. Number one, stay curious,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Stay
Yeah.
curious. And number two, like I cannot emphasize this enough for the consumer side of things, and which is 99% of Americans, right? Not
Right.
touching agriculture. That a farmer, a commodity farm, like you're talking about, like you are, like your friend is, as long as that farm is still in production, is still a farm, it can change. But
Absolutely.
once it gets paved over, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so part
Absolutely.
of the urgency that I feel is how can we make sure to support all of our farmers, even our commodity farmers, right now, so that
Right.
those farms and that land and that soil does not become pavement, strip malls, developments, data centers, or logistics for
Yeah.
energy. I think energy is a euphemism now, right? I mean, what does it actually mean anymore? It's kind of a euphemism that we use to do things that are not in harmony with nature at all.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I hadn't thought about it that way.
We don't like, it seems like that whole, when I was growing up in the 80s, there was a conversation, cultural conversation around conservation. It was a part of my life. I know what it was. I don't hear very much about that anymore. We're not talking about conserving. We're talking about using more energy. Don't worry about your energy footprint. Just turn it solar, just
Right.
turn it electric. And I think that that piece, conservation, is missing from that larger, which is also a piece of the farming conversation. Anyway, I don't want to go down that tangent just yet. I think it's also really important to touch on one thing, because we remember what we see a lot of.
Hmm.
And I want to touch on this, Adam, and I know you'll understand and empathize with it. So in our country, we have a few images of farming. We might even have uh, a few farms and even a few small farms that seemingly represent a larger conversation. And so it's too easy to look to a few examples and say, oh, look, but it's working, without digging into the nuances and understanding that for every one small farm that seems to be working, there's hundreds that aren't.
Yeah.
And the more that we can actually culturally, financially support the local farms, the ones that are kind of the underdogs, right? Think of it as
Yeah.
supporting the underdog,
Right.
rooting for the David and the David and Goliath. The more we can see a burgeoning resilience everywhere,
Yeah.
that we it's really not, it's not appropriate to use one or two or even three or even 10 examples of farms that seem to be getting it right, that seem to be making it, the ends meet, no debt. We just, it's not, it doesn't work to put that on the rest of them and say, oh, we'll just do it this way, or this one's working, why isn't yours? Because there's so many more nuances about everything that we've talked about. So anyway, I want your comments on that. um, and then want to make sure we can take some questions.
Yeah. Well, the hardest thing about it is every area, every acre is unique. So there is no such thing as universal in ag. Not at all. And that's what makes it so difficult. And how do we support farmers through that? I mean, historically we've done it through policy. I mean, whether we like the policy or not, the way it's been, but now we can't even decide on that. And who knows if we're going to get a farm bill? Who knows if we're still going to have a sugar program next year? None of these things that have been sacred for so long. I mean, we just lost the Department of Education, for God's sakes. You think your farm bill is safe? You think your crop insurance is safe? We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, there's so much uncertainty right now, and that just adds to the anxiety of it, the pressure. You can feel it wherever you go. As people are just anxious, they don't know what's going to happen. Like I said, the commodity classic was packed. People are searching for answers. Like, where do we go from here? Nobody knows, and that again, it all goes back to the mental health part of it. It's pressure. It wears on people, and then now I just feel like I'm going in circles because it's such a big topic. How do you tackle all of it? I don't
Yeah,
know if I
well,
answered your question, but
you started with every acre is different.
yeah.
So every acre is different, every farm is different, every farmer is different.
Yeah.
So it's would you say, I guess, just to wrap that up, would you say you agree that we can't look at uh, a couple of farms as examples of
Yeah.
it works, that's what everybody should be doing,
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Yes. Yeah.
especially because of the added pressures that you're just talking about? Some commodity farmers are trying to understand how to transition to organics, or some uh, are not inheritors, and so they have to start from scratch, and their farm financials are going to look very different from somebody who inherits land. And there's all kinds of networks and community support built in that make one farm more resilient than another farm. And so I guess my whole point in that is that I really, really want to encourage people to get curious about their local farms and while so many farms are worthy of support, like your friend who's growing the beef and transitioned, is there a way to find those worthy of support close to home so that we're also not reliant on the logistics of styrofoam boxes and long distance transportation and tons of freezer space, right? How can we work with the natural constriction that's happening to support the producers closest to us in community with us? Does that make sense?
It does, and I don't know if it's anything specific that we'll do, but I think the market is going to drive that, and I think that ties into demographics. Like we've got an old aging farming population who's holding on to the status quo as hard as they can, and there's a younger generation who wants to do things differently. And when that shift happens, it's going to happen fast. I mean, there's a massive land transition that's going to happen here at some point. I mean, the average age of farmers is 58 years old, I think, in the country, and who's going to farm all that when they're gone? Certainly not me. I don't have the money to start a farm. I mean, how many people do? Um, but yeah, this there's an appetite for it, and the market is going to drive it. Young people are going to drive it. Like when Sherry's friends are talking about cover crops and maha grain and millennials, Gen X, they're talking about soil health, real food, food sovereignty. People, it's going to be market driven, and it's going to happen whether people like it or not. I don't know how much we can actually influence it, like on a personal level, just like you and I talking. I don't know. I think there's bigger things at play. Hmm.
So are you saying that it's more likely, excuse me, more likely to be influenced by those big policy level changes than it is? I mean, I don't know. It almost sounds like you're contradicting yourself. You're saying it's market
Probably.
driven. It's market driven. Um, and at the same time, and I agree, and at the same time, it's something bigger than that. And I agree. I mean, I think that's part of the conundrum of like why nobody can actually put their finger on it. And you know what, Adam? Like, I also want to just take a moment and say, you can do all the research you want. You can read all the agricultural economists you want, and you're going to get so many different perspectives on this. And so, like you're saying, it's trial and error. There's so
Yeah.
much of this that's trial and error, and I cannot even begin to tell you how many of those experts, the agricultural economists, and the university people, they tell me they're 60 something and retired, and they're like, I should have done what you're doing. This is complete
Right.
BS. The agricultural economists. Yeah, they tell me that. I mean, I cannot even tell you how many times I've heard that. And of course, they can't say that publicly, but like privately, they say the things that I've done, like innovating some of the ways that people get food and connecting people to local farms. And I'm sure like some of the things that you're witnessing and you're doing, like sometimes you just got to throw the academics out and start with the land and start with that trial and error. So
Mhm.
all of that to say, yeah, you're right. This is so complex. It is both market driven and policy driven. It's not one or the other, right?
No, it's not. You're right. I probably am contradicting myself. I'm not here to claim that I'm an expert on anything. I'm just a farmer trying to figure all this out, but you're right, and that's part of the problem too. Is that yeah, they'll say that to you privately, but nobody will say it publicly, and too many people are afraid to speak up and go against the grain and maybe look different. God forbid. And need more people to do that. That will drive the change. But I guess what I was saying is it's a demographic thing. It's a big it's a bigger driver than we can influence. See, so complicated.
It is, but
Yeah,
staying curious.
yeah.
I
Stay
mean, it all comes
curious.
down to
Yeah.
staying curious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I want to use the word resilience. And I know that word is used a lot these days.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's still such an appropriate word, especially when we're talking about agriculture and growing and the inputs, because resilience ultimately and ecological resilience is about an entire system's ability to adapt to challenge and change.
Right.
It's so easy, and I know I go here all the time, Adam, and you can tell me if this is the same for you or not, but it's so easy for me to go in and see that the networks that once supported our personal resilience, our community resilience, are spread so thin right now that it almost feels like we are going to have some type of, I don't know, collapse is also overused, but some type of
Yeah.
collapse. But then on the other hand, I look at nature, and nature, one way or another, is always, always resilient.
Yeah.
And it's hard to hold these two competing ideas at the same time, right? I mean, do you struggle with that also?
Yeah. Yeah. All the time. It's hard for anybody to hold two opposing ideas in their head at the same time. But I mean, that's what I always try to do. Like, if I have an opinion on something, I look for the other side of it because I want to prove myself wrong. I don't want to prove myself wrong, but I just want to make sure I'm not just another sounding board saying this is the way it is, because I don't know.
Yeah.
I I don't know. Like, I'm just curious. I'm trying to figure it out. Just like I feel like more people, I don't want to say should do. I'm not going to tell people what they should do, but it would sure be nice if there was more curiosity, if there was more people willing to speak up and say, you know what, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's it's
Yeah.
not going to kill you to not know. But that's what farming has always been, is learning, a curiosity. Like, how can we do this better? What could we do differently? That's what
Or
that's what farming is to me.
what made that happen? Like, I
Yeah. Or
could
why
say
did
that
this
about,
happen? Yeah.
why did my garlic do so well when I planted it in December? Like,
Yeah. You wouldn't
why?
you wouldn't believe how many times I drove around with the old boss 20 years ago, and we'd drive by something like, oh, I wonder what the hell happened there. And then we just forget about it and never learn from it, and I don't know if that's a generational mentality or what that is, or if I'm just a weird guy that craves to know why things happen. I don't know what it is, but yeah, it sure makes it interesting, I guess. So
It does make it interesting, doesn't
yeah.
it? Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, I want you to know that I once again planted my garlic in December,
Yeah.
and I have beautiful green garlic coming up.
Right
So
on.
once
Yeah.
again, it worked. Um, and yeah, I don't know what to make of that. But anyway, Adam, my battery is about to die. So
Oh, okay.
we
Don't
can
worry.
wrap this up.
Yeah.
We have lots of people on. Thank you all for joining. Thanks for listening to our thoughts on farmers under pressure and why this matters, why it matters right now, right, Adam?
Yeah.
And if anybody has any quick questions, we'd be happy to answer them or tackle them, whatever that looks like. But you know what? It's really good to see this community here on Substack and to have people, so many people interested in these topics.
It is. And that's how you and I met, was because
Yeah.
I was trying to get them to put an agriculture category on Substack. And it's like, we're 1%. They even ignore that. They still haven't done it. But it's crazy. It's like every week I find a new ag writer on here. So there is a ton of us out here
Yeah.
doing this. And it should be a lot easier to discover us, because this is a major topic. There's a lot of interest in it.
Huge.
It's like
And
they're
it's
missing the boat
1%
on
of
this one.
people in ag, so to speak, but it's 100% of
Affects
people
everybody.
dependent on ag.
Everybody. It should be it's the letter A. It should be the first topic on, or the first. Sorry, I'm getting all worked up about the
No,
subcategories again.
absolutely. I completely agree. We have to have these conversations. We have to understand. We have to get curious.
And I know there's a lot of people with me. Helen Freeman, she's frustrated about this too. There's a ton of people that,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, we need a platform, a voice, and this is what's going to do it, though. Talking about it and bringing people out, having a conversation. This is what's going to drive that. So
Absolutely. And yeah,
yeah,
Helen I just had her on the podcast, the
I
Nourishing
saw
My
that. I
Living
haven't watched
podcast.
it yet. Yeah,
Yeah. And she's of course a UK farmer.
right.
And her Substack is Me, My Pigs, and I, right? Did I get
Mhm.
that right?
Yes.
And
Yep.
she's talking about the exact same thing. Like, we are in echo of each other, because she talks about food security over there. I
Yeah.
talk about food security over here. Adam, you're talking about it in your own way with telling these incredible and rich stories of what it's like to be that farmer, to watch your community dwindle.
Yeah.
And we're all talking about the same thing, which is our food security, our communities, our culture. Oh, big deep stuff for a Tuesday morning. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think for us it's 24/7. Like,
Yeah, that's pretty normal for me. It's not
yeah.
nothing new. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say just my closing thoughts are for people to stay curious, ask questions about your food, ask questions about your the agriculture that's happening around
Mhm.
you, and make that as small or as large as you want. Like, really get curious about it and get curious about why certain topics are pushed over other topics, or why certain farms or farming types are promoted over others. Like, just get really curious. And then for me, that curiosity always leads to history and policy. So I do
Sure.
talk about that quite a bit on my Substack. So if you're curious about some of these policies, then go over to Raw Milk Mama and search some of those articles. And what are your closing thoughts, Adam?
I'm with you. Stay curious, learn about it. I mean, it feels like a whole industry forgot about the humans that are growing the food for other humans. And it's a human business, and be curious about it. Don't just demonize something you don't understand. Learn about it. Um, yeah, there's a lot of resources out there that aren't just corporate egg pumping a story. There's a lot more to it, but you have to be curious. You have to try to find it, and I
Yeah,
encourage you to do that.
wonderful. All right. Well, we'll do this again soon. And
Yeah,
thanks again to everyone who tuned in. And I will sign off here before I get cut off.
all right. Well, thanks so much.
So good to see you, Adam.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Okay.
Bye bye.